So morning everybody, thank you for joining us for another Workshop Wednesday. Today we've got Barry and David from Perlos who are going to host this workshop for us. So I'm not going to delay anymore and I shall hand straight over to these guys. Thanks folks.
Hello everybody, good to see you all. Thanks for taking a little bit of time out of your busy diaries to come and see the webinar today. Webinar will probably be about 30 to 40 minutes, which is good for people with busy diaries in the further education market, which is everybody, especially people in the marketing department. So today we wanted to talk about a few things. I want to talk about budgeting, events, messaging, all linking into the same kind of area for marketers. So in terms of budgeting, Perlos isn't an expert in budgeting, but we do speak with a lot of people who have a lot of pressures around budgets. So we wanted to investigate that in today's webinar, especially for some of the more senior marketers where they'll have to manage this throughout the year, really. Barry? Go to the next slide, Barry, that'd be great. So I'll give a couple of minutes overview of Perlos just so that people know about the company and the product, but I'll move swiftly on after that. So Perlos has been around a couple of years now. We work 98% of the time with further education colleges, work with sixth form colleges, universities and training providers as well. We've got Martin Dole, who used to run the AOC as our chief FE advisor, and we've just brought Rob Bristow on board that left Pearson as their CEO of the UK. As our HE advisor as well. But we've developed two products for the industry. One product is a product called Perlos Convert, which is a software that helps institutions to increase their conversion rates, increase engagement with students during the admissions process and during the first 6 weeks of term. And that product is a half human, half tech-based digital assistant that connects to applicants throughout the admissions process using more modern communication tools. So things like WhatsApp rather than email and phone. And we also use intelligent tech and AI to highlight at-risk learners as well. So which learners are most likely to drop out and why. And yeah, we have a number of different use cases where we can show really good ROI for our clients. We've also recently launched a new very popular software, which is called Perlos Destinations. So the current state of the market is that most colleges would use a phone call company to ring up students to find out where they've gone after they leave, or they would get their own tutors to do that, which takes a lot of time away from staff. So what we've done is we've automated outreach to students who have left to find out their destinations, but also to find out more qualitative information through our software as to the curriculum, and it helps you design the curriculum in a better, more effective, efficient way. So that also uses WhatsApp and an automated bot to reach out to students to get that information. Next slide. So today, just going to break it down into three areas. Going to talk a little bit about budgeting, just to kind of stir your thoughts a little bit. Then we're going to look at events. Most colleges will be running events pretty much non-stop from now, or even a couple of months ago. Different types of events, open days, taster days, admissions days, with different aims. So we'll have a little look through that. And then we'll also have a look at messaging. This is an area where we are experts in, so we can give you a little bit of an idea about how to think about different segments of students, how to message them, when to message them, why to message them, to hopefully make some of the marketing and admissions approaches a little bit more effective. Next slide. So looking at budgeting, just going to look at the college funding calculation very briefly, just to give a little bit of an idea of how complicated it can get, where all the money comes from in FE colleges, and why it does get quite hard to manage budgets and manage where the money comes from and where it should be going to. Then we'll have a little look at relationships, stakeholder management, maybe some things that you might have thought about, but might not have thought about in terms of persuading internal stakeholders and external ones as well. Looking at different line items, how to think about what line items are important and why. and then having a quick look at building a business case, which anybody with a budget will almost certainly have had to have done. So I'm just going to look very briefly at this, but I was always confounded by this. This is the college funding calculation for, this is for 16 to 19-year-olds, and it'll be different for adults. But the point here is that getting money for a college is really complicated. Most of the funding that you'll get from the government will be lag funded by a year. And understanding where all the money comes from is quite important, especially when you're asking other people for budgets. So if you think about 16 to 19-year-olds, most of that money is coming from the government. If you're thinking about adults, 19 plus, a lot of the courses that they are actually paying for are paid for by themselves. So just to highlight how complicated it is, and knowledge equals power here. If you really understand where the money is coming into the college, then you can understand potentially where the money comes from and how you could get a bigger share of that, and which people are in charge of it as well. Next slide. So having a think about relationships, I think a lot of people will understand that this is actually critical to driving effective budgets within the business. So obviously the finance director is the key person for finally signing off most budgets, but in certain situations, it'll just be your line manager who will take money from a certain pot. But I want to think a little bit about how you are engaging and persuading with different people within the college. It sometimes takes quite a lot of time. I'll give you a little story. So one college that we're looking at, which is a top 10 college in terms of size, it's taking about 3 to 4 months for the head of student services to get their own budget to look at both of our products. And there is a little bit of a barrier in the way. So part of the barrier is that they have to go out to tender as a college if they spend over a certain amount of money on a certain product in a certain area at a certain time of the year. And so the finance director and the board have pushed back on one of the products. And the problem there is that she's had a no to the budget. And so what she's had to do is she's had to go back to the director of student services, the admissions managers, and also the marketing team, and get them on a call with us to persuade them of the benefits and the value of our system so that she can actually get budget for that product. She's also had to go to the finance director and pitch a business case. That business case is actually geared around how much money can the college make and how much time can they save. Barry, if you can talk, go to the next slide, please. So in terms of line items, so thinking about line items, what are the most important? How do you prioritize them? Can you think about internal versus external line items? So if you're having to go and get budget to get food from the catering department to look after an important corporate client, versus if you're actually having to look externally to buy software for marketing or admissions, how are you actually going to prioritize them? Do you prioritize them by amount, which is the usual first port of call, or do you prioritize them by the potential benefit that you might get off the back end? One big thing to think about is staff versus non-staff. How effective are the staff that you are hiring going to be? How do you know? What are your recruitment processes like? How do you ensure that you're constantly improving the quality of people that you hire? How can you measure how effective they are at their roles at the end of the year and match that back against things that are non-staff? Usually staff costs are the biggest line item. So how are you actually measuring how effective the staff are? Next slide. So no doubt a lot of people with a budget will have understood what a simple business case looks like. Talking about the benefits, talking about the cost. This really is what people look at as the first, as the last stage, but it should, as the first stage, but it should be the last stage. Developing those relationships with people inside the college and building up more persuasion inside the college before writing your business case is really important. And you shouldn't always have to write your business case on your own. A lot of our clients actually get us to help them with their business cases. There's quite a few things to think about, but research is one of the most important things. So before you write a business case, you need to do your research. You need to have a goal in mind for the project, whether it's to create a new product, help drive more student applications, improve the student experience. Whatever your main goal is, that's got to be the first thing that you've got to think about. So for instance, if you were looking at a number of different software systems, you have to do your research, go out to market and compare and contrast the different systems. So you can begin by researching different competitors for the system or the budget line item that you're trying to buy, and look at the gap and problem that it's trying to solve. You can start to brainstorm what the actual business case or project strengths or weaknesses or opportunities or threats are. We do that for our business as a whole. And additionally, you'll want to learn about the market in general. So whoever the consumer of the project is going to be, even if that's your own team. Number two, the number two thing that's really important is to focus on one component at a time. So business case is usually going to include several different documents. Focusing on one at a time is going to be quite important, and keeping yourself organized. And then you need to write an implementation plan. So once you've gathered your research and then you're working through each component, it's important to start thinking about implementation, because whoever you're going to ask for budget is going to say, okay, how are you going to actually implement this project? And then they're going to analyze how effective your answer is. So talking to a few people within the industry recently, if you're looking at persuasive business cases, you need to get proof points. So where are you getting proof points from? Have they got credibility? When looking at a project for labor market data, one of our clients looked at a lot of data from the government website, from EMSI, the economic modeling company, and also from RCU Vector, which a number of the colleges will be using. Usually you'll get interviewed by senior stakeholders within your organization around your business case. So the way that we like to think about pitching a business case to senior people is, what are their potential objections? Have you written them down? Can you think ahead of time? And can you write down a really good answer for that, rather than having a kind of waffly answer, which will mean that it'll come across much more effectively. And what's also important is thinking about whether you could potentially generate money from other areas. I think Barnsley College is a really good example. Their principal is from a corporate background. They make nearly 50% of their money from non-government funding these days. So even thinking about your own department in terms of what things you could do to make money proactively from other means. So I know that I think it was R&N Group have sponsored employer forums. They sponsored employer academies, apprenticeship programs, and they've generated revenue for the business. They have empty spaces and empty office spaces, empty buildings that they've turned into office space for companies within the region, which is a great way to start raising money, which means that the budgets that you need potentially might start to reduce. So that's kind of a different way to think about it. And that's kind of one of the most important aspects. What I'll talk about now is an area where we've got slightly more experience. Barry, if you just go on to the next slide and then the next slide. So looking at events. So I'm guessing that a lot of people here will be thinking about events today. How creative and innovative are your ideas, and where are you getting them from? How are you really different? The kind of essence of strategy and marketing strategy really is differentiation. A number of times when I speak to colleges and I say, okay, how are you different to other colleges? We usually get an answer about a certain building or the way that they approach their courses. But usually it comes across in quite a similar way. So how often have you tried something new? This is just an explanation from Keele University. And on the left, you can see their "Nobody's Perfect" slogan. And they got #1 in England for overall student satisfaction every single year, except for 2017, where Loughborough took the trophy. But that was just taken from a famous Porsche ad, which was run just the year before they ran this ad. And and Loughborough University, in terms of their applications and conversions and enrollment numbers, was one of the best in the country at this time. So have a little think about where you can take ideas from across the country. Next slide. So in terms of events, you have a number of different events, but like I said at the start of the webinar, what is your main aim? Are you trying to get more students to apply? Probably, that's probably one of the main aims. There's also thinking about things like, are you improving awareness and branding of the college? But usually, especially at this time of year, the core aim would be getting applications. So one thing that we've supported and kind of taught our clients to think about was, is an application, are all applications as strong as each other? Potentially not. Over the last couple of years, we've seen the number of colleges that students have actually applied to increase quite a bit. So if somebody has applied to your college, come to an event, filled out an application form, how do you know that they're actually going to start with you at the start of term on September the 1st? You don't necessarily. So rather than just getting students to the point where they filled an application form, can we be skeptical? Can we perhaps question whether that applicant or student really wants to come to our college as their top choice? So we do a number of nudge messages for colleges around events. One of the most effective is to use WhatsApp instead of email and phone to do reminders to get more applicants to turn up to the event in the first place. And when COVID was happening, this was very effective for virtual events on Teams as well. For one of our colleges, R&N group up in Yorkshire, we actually increased their taster day turn up by 98%, which made a big difference to the top of the funnel. So this is an example message from our R&N group. Hi student, we're delighted to invite you to one of our college taster sessions on event date X at event time Y. The taster sessions will allow you to sample your chosen course and find out more about college. If you haven't booked a place already, you can book it here at this link. You can also let me know here whether you'd like to attend. Press 1 for yes, press 2 for not sure, press no, press 3 for no. And we have a lot of data on when to get the certain types of students, whether it's 16 to 19-year-olds, adults, and 19 plus. We have data on when the best time to connect to them is. So what we found over the last year was very short messages work. We found out that WhatsApp was the best channel over email and phone. We found out that sending messages to students at about 9:45 on a Friday was going to give us the highest response rate. And we also found that writing messages with specific tones and language helped get a higher response rate. From one message, we actually put a question mark at the end of it, and it got a 12% increased response rate. So this is about how we tailor the message to different people. Thanks, Barry. One other thing I was going to say about that is think about how you can question students as to whether you are their top choice. For Bradford College, we sent out a message which listed all of their competitors in the local area. So the message went something like, hi student, thanks for your application, thanks for filling it out. Here's the top 5 colleges in the area. Can you list these in terms of your order of priority? And if Bradford wasn't at the top of that list, they wanted to know why. And they knew that they could focus on some warmer students and focus less time on the students that had put their college 3rd, 4th, or 5th in terms of priority order. So why do students drop out? One question I would think in terms of colleges, I think to ask yourselves would probably be, do we really know why students drop out? I'd say probably about 95% of the time over the last couple of years, the main answer has been, yes, it's competition. And then the question that I follow up with is, how do you know? And usually it's anecdotal. Well, we've had a few people from telephone surveys after they've left, and we've asked them. But usually the telephone isn't a great way to get through to these students, especially after they've left as well. So to be honest, sometimes it's a wild ankle guess. We have data from over 50 colleges over the last year and a half, highlighting the reasons that students do drop out. And to be fair, competition and college choice is actually the top one, but it's only just the top one. There's usually a lot of other supporting reasons. So second would be course selection. So how happy are the students with the course that they've chosen? Can you figure out earlier whether they might move from one course to another? A lot of the colleges find this out in the 6-week period, and probably in week 4, 5, 6 of the 6-week period. So can we think about this sooner? Can we use better communications channels to get hold of students earlier to find this information out? How many of your students are applying to more than one course? Sometimes that can be a bit of an issue. And can you hone them down into a course that they're more focused on quicker, rather than having 5 course choices a few days before they start term? Stress and anxiety was the 9th biggest risk a year ago. And last year it grew to number 3, nearly number 2. A lot of our clients in terms of marketing tailored their marketing off the back of this. So rather than just sending updates and adverts around events, they started to send out emails and communications on Facebook and Instagram around things like free mental health apps, or free support, free drop-ins to support people that are having issues mentally. Other issues are things like employment, getting a job, which for some students has been a priority. Family issues, friends going to different colleges, travel potentially, especially for more rural colleges as well. So thinking a little bit more about why students drop out will allow you to tailor your strategy and your messaging to students. So this is an aggregate of all of the data that we had from all of our colleges over the last year. And it shows when colleges sent campaigns through the PERLOS system. And you can see I've highlighted a few kind of key areas. So key areas have always been GCSE results day and A-levels day, because colleges want to get on top of students as fast as possible. So are you getting a message through to them quickly? Are you using a really quick, effective communications channel? If you send them an email and they don't pick it up for a week, other colleges in the area might beat you to it. Also, what we see here is that the number of messages goes down at the start of term. So in terms of thinking about marketing tech or admissions tech to support you, at the start of term, a lot of staff will start to turn to students who are actually coming into the college, having conversations with them face to face. It gets a lot busier. It's a lot harder to keep engaged digitally, especially in the first week or two of the 6-week period. So how can you kind of counteract that? Pre-planning campaigns and pre-setting up campaigns before that day around some of the key reasons that students drop out during the 6-week period, if you've done your research there. For the 6-week period specifically, we see a couple of key areas. We see swap don't drop, students being on the wrong course. We see anxiety and stress being a key issue. So we tailor campaigns to students around the 6-week period, around those subjects, but we get them planned much earlier. And you can see that a couple of weeks into the 6-week period where the graph spikes, that's when most colleges started to think to themselves, right, I really don't want to lose all of the students I worked so hard to get. And the best colleges that we saw in terms of conversion rate over the last 12 months were colleges that did 2 things. They doubled up the number of communications, and in terms of the number of campaigns sent, they sent twice as many, but also they sent campaigns 1 to 2 months earlier than the average college. And I'd probably put a caveat on that you don't want to spam students, and you probably know that. You don't want to spam students with too many messages and too many channels all the time, email, phone, text, WhatsApp. However, what I would say is we've seen that students are very receptive if they have something to gain from it. So Barry, if you go to the next slide. And what I mean from something to gain from it is, are you connecting with them at the right time? So this is a typical application process for college. It does change slightly, but you look at students who've applied, then students who interview, then they get offered, maybe in the interview or after, by email through your system, through Tribal or Pro Solutions or Capita. Then they'll accept, hopefully, and then they'll enroll at the start of term, then they'll get inducted, and then hopefully they'll be converted and you'll be able to get your funding at the end of the 6-week period. So that's a typical process in terms of application. how do we message students about things that they're bothered at the right time? So if you look at applications, for BMET in Birmingham, we actually went out to students who had half filled out application forms, and we got 31% of them to fill out those applications and finish them off within 3 days, compared to normal, which is they got about 1 to 2% to finish them off by email. Looking at event reminders, mentioned the example earlier where we managed to increase turn up rate by 98% for RNN. That isn't typical. We don't increase turn up by 98% for every event, but it is a good way to support event reminders and understanding whether they're on the right course early enough, and interrogating whether you are their top choice. So this is what I mean about getting hold of students at times when they're actually interested to reply. One of the biggest areas we look at is enrollment. So how many people don't turn up to enrollment? And how many of those people that don't turn up to enrollment is because they don't want to come, and how many is because they just haven't received a communication? We ran one message for Newham College last year for 125 of their withdrawn students, and 66% of those withdrawn students, when we connected to them, actually turned around and came back into the college. And what's even better is that they all stayed until after the 6-week period. And then at the end, you can see messages around anxiety or swapping their course during the 6 weeks. Those are the ones that have the best response rates. So that's just a little bit of insight from our data. So this is what I've kind of covered over the last few slides. Email and text and phone are not going to go away at colleges or universities or schools anytime soon. And there's definitely a place for them. However, how effective are they for certain types of students? So think about how often students will actually reply to you on email or reply to you on text or even pick up the phone. We're looking at new channels like WhatsApp. We're looking at Discord. We want to be where students want to be. And it depends which segment you're going after as into how engaged they are on those systems. But I would just urge you to have a little think about what other channels potentially you could use. That's pretty much what marketing is around, right? It's about testing different channels. There are only 19 marketing channels in the world. So you're probably using 2 or 3 of those over and over again. Paid ads, events, but potentially could we be using a few other ones? Can we be innovative and test a few other channels? Next slide, Barry. So I did touch on this earlier, but an example from our data and feedback from clients over the last couple of years is what should the tone of the messaging be? So this is an example from a message we sent for Nescott College to figure out whether students were on the right course or not. Very simple message, but this message specifically was for 16 to 19-year-old students. You can see there's emojis there. You can see that the language is quite informal. And we're actually starting to message parents for different colleges at the moment. And we're also messaging adults on short courses. And the tone and the layout of the message is quite different for them, more professional, fewer emojis, and that's about how we get the best response rate from different students in terms of the tone of the message. Next slide. Looks like the slides are stuck at the moment. I have to bring them up myself. I've got to help sharing my slides at the moment, so apologies. Do you want to unshare and share again, Barry? Okay, I'll try and share my screen if that's not going to work. Okay, perfect. Well, luckily that was actually the last slide, so that's why it stuck. So yeah, I think we've finished. We'll take a few questions if you want, or if you want, you can just take the recording and send it to people that didn't manage to get here.
Thank you. That was great. Has anyone got any questions? You can unmute yourself and feel free to ask. I don't think anyone's put anything in the chat. No. These are normally quite a chatty bunch, so.
Well, I've got somebody wanting to have a chat with me.
Yeah.
Either she wants to tell me off, or
No, I don't want to tell you off, David.
Perfect. Okay.
I want to book you in to present to my colleagues.
Oh, that's nice. That's better.
There we go.
I think we can probably highlight that we're not budgeting experts, but I did have a chat with about 5 marketing directors. One of them was Sally Stedman, used to be the marketing director at RNN. She moved to Barnsley. She's our interim at the moment. And she was talking a lot about how to be a bit innovative with the budgeting side of things and how to kind of persuade internally other people to get budgets. And I've just had similar kind of conversation with somebody at one of the top 10 colleges with me about her struggling to get budget. And she's really talking to me about how to persuade multiple different people in different ways to get the budget. So it is a real fight, but seems like there's a real knack to it, which you probably know.
Yeah. It's normally trying to pinch other people's budgets is what the best one, especially being as it sort of overlaps obviously with like admissions. So unless you've got a marketing and admissions kind of role, sometimes you have to go pinching other people's budgets, and I've done that in the past.
Yes, well, the biggest thing we saw, I talked to Hilary from the AOC, and it's been pretty obvious to us that over the last year, one of the biggest problems has been recruitment. I think it's been such a stressful year in education, full stop, schools, universities, but I think the FE market might have lost 15% of staff, and I don't think that 15% have been replaced because the people just aren't there, and that puts pressure on being able to borrow other people's budgets.
Yeah, I think it's I do think there's an issue with that. I know I think colleges are recruiting. I'm not sure that everyone's getting the applicants that we might want. So
well, one thing that I didn't mention is that the OC did some data analysis, and I think most people probably know this, but the 16 to 19-year-old demographic for FE are going to increase by 90,000 in the next 5 years. And that sounds great. It sounds like, yes, we'll probably hit our enrollment numbers, but if you do enroll loads more students, you're going to get more funding from the government, which is one potential issue. But if all of those extra applicants are there and we don't convert them, that would be a bit of a shame, a bit of a nightmare. And Rob Bristow is helping us with our future strategy. And the big thing that's happening in the world is that there's just a lot more educational options out there. So there's boot camps, apprentices, all of these kind of things. So yeah, I think a couple of things are really important there is automation. If you have another 90,000 extra students in the country and we don't have the same percentage increase in terms of admissions or marketing staff, it's just going to have to work harder and work harder. So we have to be a bit smarter in terms of automation and things like that. And also think about conversion in terms of you're going to have more applicants. So how you think about conversion rather than just getting more people in the top of the funnel, which is mainly where marketing people's heads are at.
Yeah, interesting. Are you going to be doing any sort of paper to publish on that kind of information, or?
Yes, but probably not until it would be nice if we could do it now for the next couple of months where people can look at it, but historically the next 3 months are incredibly busy for us and for the colleges. So we'll probably do one for next year. One thing to think about on the destination side, we just created that new destinations product. Some colleges are really organized at it, some aren't. Because you have to really start thinking about it now, and admissions is a priority over destinations now. But obviously intended destinations interviews start happening around, I don't know, June, July, before students who aren't going to come back in year 2 and don't progress. We'd want to sit down with you and tell you where they're going. Are they going into a job or a different level of education, or are they going to be unemployed? So it's worth thinking about that, because come September, you'll need to go out and find all of that information from your students, which we do through WhatsApp, and Ofsted are getting more and more bothered about it. And they're not just bothered about the thing that colleges have always been bothered about in the past, which is the percentage of known destinations, i.e. can we get a higher percentage of known destinations, understanding where more of our students are gone. They're moving towards more qualitative information in terms of on top of where they've gone. Can you ask the student about whether they thought their course they did with you was relevant? And can you use that to design your curriculum? So that's becoming more important to Ofsted.
Yes, definitely.
But yeah, thanks for having us on. It was great.
Yeah, thank you very much for presenting, and thank you for everyone for joining. I know a few people have had to duck out because I've got other meetings, but I will share the recording with everybody. So thank you very much. And if no one's got any questions, I think that's us done.
Yep, great. Perfect.
Brilliant. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Emma. See you later.
Bye.